What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Art of Suffering podcast. Today we're jumping back into Forever Loved by Dr. Mike Darnell. Last week we read chapter 1. I want to apologize. I've listened to that episode. My public reading skills are lacking, but you're just going to have to kind of walk the journey with me. Never been a super strong reader. I'm ADHD and dyslexic, so that kind of keeps me on the bottom rung of the barrel when it comes to reading out loud. Reading in general, really, but that's not really the point. So if you can suffer through with me, you'll probably get a lot out of this book, but just keep that in mind as we go along that the struggle's real over here. So let's jump right into chapter 2. It's How God Created Me. I'll link chapter 1 below so you can go back and listen to it if you haven't listened to it yet. Gosh, Granddad started all of his chapters out with like readings from Psalms. Like old school Bible, right? So, here we go. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou dost know when I sit down and when I rise up. Thou dost understand my thoughts from afar. Thou dost scrutinize my path and my lying down, and art intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, thou dost know it all. Thou hast enclosed me behind and before, and laid thy hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. Where can I go from my spirit, or where can I flee from my presence, thy presence? If I ascend to heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest parts of the sea, even there thy hand will lead me, and thy right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, and the light around me will be night. Even the darkness is not dark to thee, and the night is as bright as day. Darkness and light are alike to thee. For thou didst form my inward parts. Thou didst weave me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are thy works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from thee, when I was made in secret and skillfully skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Thine eyes has seen my unformed substance, and in thy book they were all written, in the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. How precious also are thy thoughts to me, O God! How vast is the sum of them! If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. Psalm 139, 1 through 18. My child, I know sometimes you must think I really don't care about your pain and loss. It deeply concerns me when you perceive me as cold and uncaring. I do not understand. I made you. I understand your countless questions. I am touched with the feeling of your infirmities. Do you need a good cry? Go right ahead. But don't let your loss and separation drive you away from me or cause you to become bitter against me. I know it is your tendency to withdraw and protect yourself in times of hurt, isn't it? Come, I above all am acquainted with grief. Your father. So there's one of these in the first chapter, and I think it's Granddad's perception of what God is saying to him. I think it's him, God speaking to him, right? And knowing his most inner parts, knows his tendencies. I I do this quite often. Imagine what God would say to me in personal situations or in these little situations I find myself in. And sometimes it's like, you know, a bunch of different versions of the Father. As far as like, I think sometimes he laughs with me, and I think sometimes he cries with me, and I think sometimes he corrects me, you know. But all of these things are just like a relationship you would have with your father here on earth, or a father here on earth. Maybe not yours, but you kind of get the idea. So the first little section here is fearfully and wonderfully made. Do you ever wonder why God made you the way he did? Don't you wish you could sometimes push a button and turn those emotions totally off, or at least bring them under control for a while? How did this creator compose us anyway? Let's look at our human structure in hopes to understand some of these roller coaster emotions. We are made up of three parts: the body, which relates to the environment through the five senses; spirit, which relates to God; and soul, which means psyche and is where we get our words, psychology, and personality. Through the soul, our personality, we relate to others. A human is one person with three functions which interrelate. Let's take a closer look at the soul of a man. The soul is made up of the mind, which does the thinking, emotions, which do the feelings, and the will, which is the which is volatile. Dadgummit. And does the choosing. What an amazing machine. Wouldn't you agree? The body is made up of 10 major systems, all intricately related to the central nervous system. Scientists say that you cannot link one thought without having a physical reaction. That's how lie detectors work. Chemical and physical reactions based on the thought process. Thoughts can be so powerful that the body can be affected physiologically. For example, if your body has the flu, your emotions can be affected, and vice versa. If your thoughts are anxious, the result can be ulcers in your body. In other words, the body reacts to the psyche of a person. During seasons of loss, especially in the event of a sudden death of a loved one, the brain has a way of going through shock as a defense against too much incoming pain, much like a circuit breaker when there is an overload of an electrical usage. People who are in car accidents where the body is lacerated sometimes don't feel the pain due to shock. It's the body's way of defending itself against excessive pain. Loss through death or separation sends the mind, emotions, and body reeling with intense imaginations. After the initial shock to our psyche, denial and disbelief take over in order to slow down the incoming pain of reality. Grief and loss now have the potential of affecting the whole person, body, soul, and spirit, which can ultimately lead to depression, withdrawal, and isolation. At this point, medications such as sedatives are sometimes prescribed. Most grief experts say drugs may be taken for some relief, but they must not be taken for the purpose of avoiding grief. Grief is a needed process. A counselee of mine had lost her beautiful baby after only 7 months. She had thoroughly enjoyed motherhood. She described her journey through the grief process. There's no way around or over. You can't escape. You have to just go through it, and that's the hardest way. I just wanted to be happy so badly. I delayed my grief process by going wild and going to bars, but the pain was still there. I tried to escape through medication, but the medication only masked the feelings I needed to own and talk about. I needed to truly grieve my loss. The grief process is God's way of healing us. Feelings follow thinking. Understanding how our mind and emotions work is important if we are to properly respond to strong, intense, and sometimes disabling emotions such as dread, worry, fear, guilt, loneliness, or anger. I have a sign on my desk that says, "Truth is what God says, regardless of how I feel." Got a whole episode on that. Focusing on truth instead of my feelings is imperative. Feelings follow thinking. You cannot feel or behave differently than what you would believe or think, for emotions are a byproduct of thoughts. Someone accurately said, "The problem is not the problem is your thinking about the problem." Serious problems emerge by allowing our feelings to be bearers of truth. Feelings are neither true or false. One's thoughts alone possess the quality of truth or error. When truth is derived from our erroneous feelings, the resulting emotions can be crippling. The only way to control feelings is by controlling one's thoughts with accurate facts, or scriptural facts. Paul reminds the Corinthians to take every thought captive. That is a choice of the will. Remember, feelings are not facts. Paul also says the mindset on the flesh is death, but the mindset on the spirit is life and peace. It's important where you choose to set your mind. Painful circumstances often reveal our weaknesses emotionally. Emotions we never knew we possessed now seem to possess us. Our true belief system and values are exposed during stressful times. I remember in our early marriage, we went to Alaska to visit Sue's family. We stayed with them for 4 months. If anyone would have asked me if I had a possessive or jealous bone in my body, I would have been offended. Of course, I didn't. Until one evening, Sue and her 3 sisters and mother were watching old black and white Jerry Lewis movies. I didn't feel I could compete with that inner circle of females, so I opted to go to bed at 11:30. I was in hopes that Sue would choose to go with me, but instead she said, "That's great, Mike, go ahead. I'll be there after the movie." As I listened to the girls laugh and have fun together, feelings emerged, of which, as I listened to the girls laugh and have fun together, feelings emerged of which I was unaccustomed. An angry smoke came out of my nose and ears. The Lord wouldn't let me sleep until I agreed with him about what he was showing me about myself. I was angry and jealous. Confession is just agreeing with God about what he shows you about yourself. Different circumstances force different emotions to the surface. Intense language, intense feelings. Did you know that feelings line up with the degree of intensity of some of the language used in your thought process? This ought to be good for me. For example, if you make an emotionally charged statement like, "I'll never see my husband again," that simple, single statement, if thought about long enough, can lead to depression. That statement is uttered as fact and truth, all inclusive, never changing. I'll, that means me. Never, that's final and forever and ever. See, touch, smell, hear, talk, laugh, or share a meal. My, he belongs to me, he's mine. Husband, at the moment the most significant person in my life. Wow, that hurts. Those are unbearable thoughts, and the emotions respond with the same intensity. First, the statement must be challenged by the truth. Is that statement totally true for the believer? No, it's really a lie, isn't it? Can the statement be restated? What if I say, "I miss my husband terribly, but there is a good chance that I shall see him again. If he is killed, he will be separated only for a season. It will not be final, for we shall be together eternally." It is still a painful statement, but there is hope based on the Word of God. The Apostle Paul says, "If we have hoped in Christ in this life only, we are of all men most to be pitied." No clue what that means. Let me read it again. If we have hoped in Christ in this life only, we are of all men most to be pitied. 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 It's pitied. The heck? We are of all men most to be pitied. Should have paid attention in school. Focus on the truth. The importance of focusing our mind on the truth cannot be emphasized enough. It is the difference in life and death to our spiritual, psychological, and physical well-being. In 1984, Designed for Living, the Christ-centered counseling ministry which I started was only a dream. My grandmother had recently died, and the estate passed to my mother and uncle, who graciously gave us the first opinion of buying the old home to remodel for counseling offices. Sue and I were at the lowest point financially that we had ever been. In fact, we had garage sales in order to buy paint, caulk, etc., to remodel the old house. We were making progress, but it had to be re-roofed, which would cost about $2,000. My uncle loaned me the money for the roof, so we were all set. I left for Atlanta to speak in a church, thinking that I would return there to be a beautiful new light gray roof on the house, thereby being one step closer to Design for Living becoming a reality. I could picture the finished roof in my mind, and my emotions followed with excitement. The next morning, my beautiful wife called. "Mike, we have a problem." As I listened, my emotions plunged from excitement to disappointment. There's no decking under the old roof. The roofers will have to deck the whole house before it can be roofed. It will cost another $2,000. There on the phone, my fearful feelings ambushed me with thoughts like, I'll never be a success. Excuse me. I'll never be a success. What are people going to think of me now? I'm broke and going under. While on the phone, however, I changed my focus. I thought of the scripture. If then you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on this earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. I pictured myself seated with Christ in heavenly places. From that vantage point, my feelings began to change, for I could see my problem, lack of finances, from an entirely different perspective. I pictured the world, the United States, the South, Alabama, Montgomery, and then one little roof on 1810 Fifth Street. Suddenly, my problem was smaller. I responded to Sue by saying, "Sue, God knew that there was no decking on that house. This trial is to force us to walk by faith, not by sight. Tell the workers to deck the roof of the house." My degrading, condemning emotions subsided when exposed by truth. My sermon that Sunday was entitled, "Not Looking at the Waves." It was the story recorded in Matthew 14 about Peter walking on the water. The church gave me an offering of almost $1,000. Monday morning, my uncle called to tell me that he wanted the loan $2,000 to be gifted instead, as he could use the tax break, which meant I did not have to pay the money back. The remaining $1,000 came in through garage sales and small gifts. In 2 weeks, when the roof was completed, I gave the roofing company my check for $4,000. God has reminded me many times through this experience to change my feelings by changing the focus of my thoughts. In looking at our problems, we tend to react to our circumstances out of our emotions. When we focus on truth, we respond to our circumstances out of His resources. And that is the end of chapter 2 of Forever Loved by Dr. Mike Darnell. See, these are stories that I don't remember. He might have told me, and I just don't remember them. It's so neat to sit down and read them. I find myself needing perspective in this time in my life. There's a lot of questions that I have. There's a lot of things I'm trying to do a good job at that I don't necessarily know if I'm doing a good job at. And it's so nice to not even get the answer. Maybe the answer isn't what's needed for any of us because the answer's too big, right? The answer's in the God box. And the God box is the God box. God's things are God's things. Like, you can't understand all of these things. Or I can't. Maybe you can, but I can't. And so maybe it's not the answer that we're seeking. Maybe it's companionship. Maybe it's someone else walking down the road and trying to figure it out with you. And that's enough. That God has given us people in our lives to enjoy the walk with, aka my wife and my kids and my family. And no one's really got it figured out. Some people act like they do, but everybody knows. Everybody knows. No one's got it figured out. And so maybe it's just this companionship that we need to honestly make us feel better. And that's the heart behind this deal, is like sharing the sufferings, listening to Granddad. Like, I didn't know that story. And if you knew the guy, he was an idea guy, right? He'd have an idea and then he'd freaking run after that thing. And I'm a lot like that. I think it's important to remember that there's nothing new under the sun. That the problem that you're sitting there looking at that is so big and so anxiety driven is just a blip, dude. Like, it's a blip. And there are some things that happen to us that are absolutely life altering. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But when it comes to the King, man, nothing is too big. As a matter of fact, it's all really small, I would say. I had a conversation with a guy this week. And he called and he asked me how I dealt with my diagnosis of arthritis. And kind of the way I perceived it was kind of, how do you not just hate God? You know what I mean? Like, how do you not just get frustrated all the time? And you do. But once you start changing, and he's talking about your thoughts, right? Once you start changing your thought process of suffering being a bad thing to suffering being a good thing, it puts perfect purpose behind what you're experiencing. And there's things way harder out there than arthritis. I've had podcast episodes with guys who have lived just brutal lives. The things that they have been asked to endure are unbelievable. But that doesn't make it any less purpose-driven. It doesn't. And once you start looking at the suffering as this training tool to turn you into the warrior you're supposed to be, it changes everything about what you're experiencing. So I don't get mad with God anymore. And I think this is a maturity thing. I think you grow into this, right? I think God changes you over a long period of time to become a warrior, is what it is. The battles aren't as scary because he's been faithful through all of them. So it's one of those things where you don't get up, you don't get bothered, you don't get to panicking because your thought process is rooted in truth. It's not rooted in how you feel. It's not rooted in the discomfort that you're experiencing. And so when it comes to me, when I'm looking at the arthritis, or I'm looking at, Wiley in the NICU, or I'm looking at, finances or whatever the issues are today, my emotions, the pain of the situation, the suffering of the situation is not where I'm focused on, right? I'm focused on what God is teaching me in that moment. I'm focused on what God is honing, right? And I think this change of thought process is huge. And another part of this situation, this particular guy had been in a really bad horse wreck. He's a really young guy. It's a terrible story, really. And one thing that I've been thinking about often is faith and how I don't have any of it. Not comparatively, right? I've been watching The Chosen, and Jesus is walking around healing all these people, and I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, man, do I truly believe God could heal me? Like if I asked him, like if he walked down here and walked up to me and was like, I'll heal you. All you have to do is ask. You have to ask and you have to believe. Could I do it? And a lot of times what will happen is that we won't ask and we don't believe because we don't feel like we're worthy of it. But that's not what he thinks about us. And so that was a kind of a gut check for me. It's like, man, I don't believe that. Like, I don't think he'd heal me. Like, would I have enough faith, like the woman that was bleeding for 12 years, to just touch his robe? If I just touch his robe, he'll heal me. I didn't. And that's a me problem. That's not a God thing, right? That's me not trusting in my Creator. That's not me fully submitting my belief that he is the King of Kings. But he is, and he could. Right now. And what's funny is I prayed for miracles for my wife, and they've happened. I've prayed for miracles for my children, and they've happened. I've never prayed for me, right? Not till recently. I've never got on my knees and and said, God, heal me. It's always sounded like, God, break me, right? God, change me. God, make me the man you want me to be. And part of that might be arthritis. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that confidently. I'm going to say that a large part of God turning me into the person he wants me to be was crippling me. And you know what? If that's what it takes, let's go. But it's not about the healing. It's about the faith. It's about the believing that he can do it. The belief that he is who he says he is. And that's something that's been changing in my life quite a bit the last couple of weeks. It's like, he is the freaking King of Kings. Like the king that I serve is the master of the universe, okay? He can do whatever he wants. He is bigger than you. He is bigger than me. He created all of this. That's exciting. It's freaking cool, man. It's really cool. A spider. Got him. I freaking love reading this book. I know I'm not great at reading. Don't care. I'm reading the whole damn thing. Right here on the podcast. I love it. I feel like I read chapter 2 better than I read chapter 1. maybe by the end of it I'll be pretty handy at it. Guys, I love you guys. I'm starting to grow to like this thing. It's a lot of freaking work. And but it's been a lot of fun. And I've learned so much. So much. It holds you accountable. I was telling the guys last night at small group, like it holds you freaking account. You can't get on here and say stuff and then not practice what you preach. So I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all so much for listening. I'm going to go get Wiley up. It's the second day of first grade, which is freaking crazy. But we're going to get some eggs going, some bacon going, get some biscuits, and we're going to have us a heck of a day. So, hope y'all enjoyed this episode. As always, if you need me, reach out, Dalton at 310edu.com. Never weaken.